The Atlantic Ocean hammers against the jagged cliffs of Beacon Point with a force that turns stone to sand. For decades, tourists have flocked to these heights for the panoramic views and the salt-heavy air. They rarely notice the gulls. These birds are not the scavengers found elsewhere. They possess wingspans that carve long, sharp shadows across the beach and move with a deliberate, haunting lack of fear. In the summer of 2022, the rhythm of the coast fractured. A child playing in the shallow surf vanished. No cry for help, no splash. Just empty water where a life had been moments before. The authorities cited the riptides, the unforgiving currents, and the sheer unpredictability of the Atlantic. Then, weeks later, a second child disappeared without a trace. The beach, once a place of summer play, became a site of profound, suffocating dread. The local community retreated behind locked doors, paralyzed by the realization that the sea had not simply taken these children, but had claimed them. The gulls remained, circling the cliffs in silence, watching the shore with eyes that never blinked. Elias Thorne stood on the weathered planks of the main dock, his hands gripping the railing until his knuckles turned white. He pointed a trembling finger toward the high, jagged cliffs where the largest gulls nested. "They are not scavengers," he shouted to the small crowd of officials and townspeople. "They are gatherers. They are taking them." His voice, raspy from 5 decades of salt air, cracked under the weight of his conviction. The local sheriff didn't look at the cliffs. He stared at his clipboard, his pen marking off a list of maritime safety protocols. "The currents are strong, Elias," the sheriff replied, his tone flat and devoid of interest. "The children were lost to the rip. It is a tragedy of the ocean, not a conspiracy of birds." The crowd shifted, eyes flickering between the old man and the safety of the town square. They chose to look away. They needed the riptide explanation to be true, because the alternative required them to acknowledge a predator that lived in the sky. Elias felt the isolation settle in. He turned back to the cliff, watching the black wings circle in the updraft. The truth was there, hanging in the air, but no one else was willing to look up. The drone hummed against the gale, its camera lens fighting the salt spray that coated the glass. It drifted closer to the sheer granite face, hovering where the human eye could never reach. The operator steered it toward a narrow, salt-crusted fissure, a shadow that seemed to swallow the light. As the drone pushed through the opening, the transmission flickered, static tearing across the screen before stabilizing. The view inside was not rock, but a graveyard. Dozens of seagulls shifted in the gloom, their wings brushing against the low ceiling. The camera panned, the light catching a heap of discarded history. Worn leather backpacks lay tangled with rusted watches and hundreds of sun-bleached shoes, each one a silent witness to a life interrupted. Then, the feed dipped lower. The drone hovered inches above the floor, revealing the truth that silenced the control room. Scattered among the debris were human bones, white and brittle against the dark stone. The realization hit the team like a physical blow. The disappearances were not accidents of the tide. They were deliberate. They were collected. The camera continued to record, documenting the grim inventory of a predator that had been hiding in plain sight for years, turning the cliff into a tomb. At dawn, the tactical team rappelled onto the ledge. They entered the cavern. Inside, the roar of the Atlantic vanished, replaced by an air so still it felt pressurized. They moved deeper, flashlights cutting through the gloom, but found only empty space. Then, the ceiling groaned. Without warning, tons of granite sheared away, sealing the entrance in a thunderous collapse that buried the team beneath the mountain. Rescue helicopters arrived hours later, finding nothing but a fresh, jagged scar in the cliffside. The only remnant of the mission was a single, battered camera wedged in a crevice near the debris. Experts analyzed the final frames, their hands shaking as they projected the footage. Thousands of gulls were packed into the cavern, their obsidian eyes fixed directly into the lens with a chilling, shared intelligence. The camera panned back, revealing the wall of feathers shifting aside. In the deepest shadow stood a silhouette of impossible proportions, standing motionless, as if presiding over a ritual. It was not a bird. It was a predator that defied human logic, waiting in the heart of the stone. The image remained classified, a final, soul-crushing revelation of something that had been watching humanity from the dark since the land first rose from the sea. The files were sealed. The case was marked as a geological anomaly, a tragedy of unstable rock and unfortunate timing. The authorities withdrew, leaving the cliffs to the wind and the salt. But the silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy. On the coast of Beacon Point, the rhythm of the tide remains. Yet, the atmosphere has fundamentally shifted. The gulls never left. They circle the granite heights in endless, looping patterns, their eyes scanning the surf with the same patient, obsidian focus. They watch the tourists. They watch the fishermen. They watch the water. There is no urgency in their flight, only the cold, calculated patience of a sentinel waiting for the next turn of the cycle. Humanity has moved on, satisfied with its own explanations, but the reality remains etched into the stone. Some truths are not meant to be found, and some shadows do not fade simply because they are ignored. The cliffs stand mute, guarding the dark space where the mountain was torn open. Out on the horizon, the sea churns against the rocks. Above, the wings cut through the mist. The nightmare is not over. It is merely waiting. At Beacon Point, the only answer is the silence of the cliffs, and it is a silence that refuses to